All right. What is up, everybody? Looks like we have a couple of people in here right now. We're going to wait maybe 2 or 3 minutes to be able to allow a few more people to be able to join us. So I'm very much looking forward to spending a little bit of time with you today. I hope that the wind isn't too bad. Right now I'm in the Dominican Republic having a wonderful vacation, as I told you guys the last live stream. So for those of you who are watching, where everything is being recorded, and I want to welcome you guys as well. And to everybody else who's kind of piling into the room right now, welcome, guys. I'm very pleased to be able to have you with me here. And we're going to be talking about something that I find very fun, and I also think it's really important, and something that a lot of people don't talk about that much these days, which has to do with dating and relationships in graduate school. Now, usually what ends up happening here is that you're going to find yourself in one of two situations, right? So situation number one is going to be that you and your partner actually met before graduate school began. Now, this could be something where maybe you were dating since high school. Maybe you guys met each other as undergraduates. One of my all-time favorite studies has something to do with what's called mere exposure effect. And the idea is that the more that you see someone or something, the more you automatically like it. Right. And so you may be thinking to yourself, Dr. Singh, what are you talking about? So the study basically found that the closer that you live your freshman year to someone that, thank you guys for hitting the thumbs up button as well. It helps to be able to let more people know that we're live right now. Initially, guys, I apologize. We were supposed to go live in an hour, but we've got a time zone difference here in Dominican Republic. So this is the reason why we're live streaming now. So to anybody who's going to log in an hour, don't worry, this video will still be available to you guys. And if you have any questions, just ask them down in the comment section below if you don't have active access right now to the chat window. And I'll make sure to get back to you guys. You know that I'm really good about that. I love you guys to death, and I appreciate all of you who watch. So in that study, they found the closer you lived your freshman year to someone, the more likely you were to get married. Why? Because you're more likely to be able to run into these people. It's your first year of college, so on and so forth, right? So this could be something where, you first met in high school, you guys were high school sweethearts, you dated all the way through undergrad, and now all of a sudden one of you or even both of you have gone into graduate school. Now, if this is the case for you, number one, congratulations. It's a really big deal to be able to be accepted to one of these master's or doctoral programs. Now, you guys will hear me say all the time on this channel that there's a variety of reasons to be able to go after a master's, and there's a variety of reasons to be able to go after a doctoral degree program. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on today. And as I keep kind of chatting here, guys, please do any questions that you have that has to do with attraction, dating, or relationships. And I draw based on the research literature, there are very discrete differences between attraction, dating, and relationships. So any questions that you guys have on any of those three topics, maybe you want to talk a little bit about your personal situation that you're in right now, any questions that you have, I want you to feel free to put them in the chat section right here. I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and kick it off, and I'll just say, hey, everybody. Here we go. Hey, everybody. Mariana says, I'm waiting for the final response, fingers crossed. Okay, so Mariana, what are you telling me, right? So are you asking for advice on kind of should you do it or should you not? Or what do you think? What are you asking, Mariana? What are you interested in hearing about? You're going to help us, Mariana. You're going to help me personally to be able to guide our discussion today for this hour. And in the meanwhile, we'll keep chatting about this, right? So that situation number one is that you already knew the person beforehand. And either one of you or both of you have been blessed enough to be able to get accepted to a master's program or a doctoral program. And I can tell you guys, I still remember when I first got into my first doctoral program, guys, I was thrilled. I was so excited. It was one of the greatest moments of my life, I still remember. And this was one of those situations where I ran out and I wanted to tell everybody. And this excitement lasted for a really long time until finally I got into grad school, right? And I flew over to England. I met my graduate supervisor for the first time because he was, across the pond. We had mostly met kind of via phone before then or via email. And now all of a sudden I was able to go and tour the department. It's a very exciting thing for me. I have a lot of experience in terms of people writing to me and saying, Dr. Singh, after the first year of grad school, I binged all your videos beforehand. And to be honest with you, I thought you were a liar after the first year, because first year grad school tends to be really awesome, right? You're the new kid on the block. Maybe you move to a new city, you're going to get to know tons of new people, you're going to find that local bar, which becomes your bar, you're going to know all the bartenders, you're going to join a bunch of clubs, you're the new kid on the block, and everything is super exciting. And then all of a sudden that second year comes, and there's a new cohort that comes in of all of the people who are super young, and these guys are, they're exploring things the same way that you were. And all of a sudden your supervisor and everybody else in the department basically says, okay, now you kind of understand everything here. We've gotten you initiated. Now it's time for really the ish to be able to hit the fan. And this is usually when people start to freak out a little bit, when the anxiety starts to come in. And you guys know as well as I do that 38% of men and 44% of women at some point during their graduate studies have diagnosable symptoms of either a major anxiety disorder or clinical depression, right? And that's really serious. That's across different programs. You guys know me, I'm a psych guy. Doesn't matter what kind of program that you're in right now. I work with people from all different fields. I work with microbiologists. I work with oceanographers. I work with social workers. I work with counselors, you name it. I help people get into graduate programs, write personal statements, review CVs, prep for interviews, everything and anything, right? And so because of that, right? Oh, Marianne, I see here. Right. So if anybody is interested in kind of talking with me one-on-one about your unique situation, please do feel free to get in touch with me. It'd be a pleasure to work with you guys. So, and also if you guys are interested in peer-reviewed publishing, which is the keys to the realm of getting into graduate programs as well as postdoc programs, or you're interested in learning how to be able to either get grants or, what are the best ways to be able to publish the findings of your master's thesis or your doctoral dissertation, make sure to check out Publication Academy. Publication Academy is freaking awesome. It's publicationacademy.com. I'm going to put it in here because it's awesome, right? And here's my personal email address. If you guys ever want to do a one-on-one session with me, you can kind of write to be able to book there with me. So let's go ahead and get back to Mariana here. But first, the second situation, right, that you may find yourself in is a situation where you meet somebody during graduate school, during your master's program, or during your doctoral program. And you kind of think to yourself, okay, should I actually pursue this thing or not, right? Which is a very fair question to be able to ask. So let's go ahead and see what Mariana says. So Mariana says, I'm here to see your words. I've been passed under problems during my master's because of one bad relationship. I'll tell you, Mariana, I remember when I was doing my first doctorate, so I was at Oxford, and my first year, I met a girl literally on my birthday, right, on my birthday. And, of course, I thought she was great, and we got into a relationship, and she was somebody who very unfortunately, was struggling with anxiety disorder and quite severe major depression to the point of suicidality. Somebody that it was my first serious relationship. And you know how it is when you're that young, when you're like 21, 22, Mariana, you just think that love can fix everything and these sorts of things. And now being 34 and kind of at the end of this whole academic cycle, I can tell you that, you learn not only what you want, but you also learn really what you need in relationships. And so it's really a blessing to be able to find a partner like I have who kind of meets those criteria, right, for you and who you really deeply care about. So I completely understand. I remember though, Mariana, that I legit almost got expelled from Oxford because if you watch my videos, what you'll see is that I literally failed my oral exams. If you're outside of the US, this would be like your transfer viva, where you're transferring from being a terminal master's student to a doctoral student. I failed mine. My supervisor told me that I would be fine. My friends told me that I sounded great. And I mean, guys, I bombed it. Capital B, bombed it, right? I'll tell you right now. And so what ended up happening was that relationship ended. I ended it. That bombed. I totally bombed because I spent most of my time kind of with that person or trying to take care of them. I was so young, guys. This is like, half of my life ago, right? And so it's one of these things where I was, very naive and I didn't really know what I was doing in that relationship. And that was somebody that I started dating during graduate school, right? In other words, it was somebody who she was stressed out all the time. I was stressed out all the time. It was just kind of a recipe for disaster. Honestly, we weren't at an emotionally stable place in our lives. We weren't at a financially stable place in our lives or an educationally stable place in our life. And that was really, really tough. Right. So I completely understand that, a relationship falling apart in the middle of a master's program or doctoral program, it can wreak havoc it can wreak havoc on our lives. It really can. So a lot of respect to you for, continuing to go. If it's something where you're experiencing any symptoms of depression or anxiety, remember that is like more the norm than anything else. And usually, there will be access to something in terms of counseling resources locally, right, that you can kind of reach out to. Now, guys, everybody who's just joined us here, awesome to have you with us. Really such a blessing. What we've just been doing, guys, is just going through kind of the differences between, when you've been dating somebody for a while and then you get into graduate school, and then it's something where forever April, I just saw your question, I'll get you in a second, or whether it's something, if there's a difference, whether you're dating somebody else who you meet during the doctoral program. I can tell you guys, I'm going to read April's program here, right? Sorry, April's message here. But April, I can tell you that, for me, I was dating somebody who was not in my cohort, was actually in a completely different department, who I met at a bar. But forever April is asking, do you think it's a bad idea to date someone within your department or your cohort? If not, how would you recommend meeting people? Great question. Let me take it the second question first, okay, April, and then I'll come back. And April, if April isn't your name, you can tell me what to call you as well. April, I know several people named April. So, okay, how would you recommend meeting people? My honest recommendation, I tell this to people all the time who are high school students who are transitioning to undergrad, you need the first 1 to 2 weeks of actually moving to that new area. Usually they're going to have a variety of different activities set up for you to get to know people. Guys, I want you to go to every single activity, all of them, right? You're not going to feel like it. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to say, I don't want to come to this thing. Come on. I'm exhausted. It's 2 a.m. in the morning. Everybody wants to go to this bar. It's not me. It's not what I want to do. That's okay. I want you to go and be doing those things, okay? Why? Because after those first couple of weeks, what's going to happen is that small little cliques would have already formed. You know how it is. Academia is very cliquey in the first place. And usually people end up going through their graduate experience and going through all of this with some kind of a clique. You want to make sure that you're on the inside of that clique, if nothing else. You don't have to be BFFs with everybody, best friends forever with all of these people, but you want to make sure that you have the opportunity, if nothing else, to be able to have a group of people that you can at least preliminarily bond with. So that's my recommendation there. If it's your cohort, even if it's not. So for example, just to give you an example for me, at Freshers Fair, right, which always takes place like one of the first 2 weeks before term starts at Oxford, they literally get like hundreds and hundreds of freshmen together, and everybody kind of socializes. You join clubs. I was so young. I was like 20 years old. So I joined any club where I thought I could meet girls. I mean, like either where like you would drink or where you could meet girls. Like I guarantee you I joined all of them, right? And then, of course, you barely go to any of them, but you're still on the email list the entire time. I guarantee you that was me at age 20, 21, right? Again, forever ago. But it's one of these things where meeting people in other departments, the best way you can do it is at the very beginning. The very, very beginning of everything. Now, let's say, April, that it's something that you've already been in the game for a while and you're not, you're no longer first year, maybe you're 3 years deep. So you're over halfway done with, most doctorates, depending on what kind of program you're in. Then it's something where you got to put a little bit more effort in. Then it's something where maybe you're going to meet more people who are what we would call like townies, right? Townies are just, people who are not affiliated with your institution. For example, one of my best friends at Oxford was ended up being my bin man. A bin man is like a waste disposal guy, like somebody who takes your trash bins from your house and disposes of them. Legit one of my all-time favorite people, right? Him and I still stay in touch to this day. Him and I just talked about a week and a half ago, and I'm so pleased to hear that he's doing well. Everybody, do me a quick favor, just that we can get even more people. If everybody can smash the thumbs up button real quick. Again, there's no benefit to me other than just more people can join our conversation and kind of ask questions. And also, it's just the thumbs up button. It should be at like the bottom right of your screen down here. Really appreciate it. It doesn't mean you guys donate money or anything like this. Just helps the channel. So that's what I would say. Okay, so April, that's your second question. First question April asks is, do you think it's a bad idea to date somebody within your department or your cohort? Unless it's somebody who's a faculty member, which I have seen before. No, I do not think it's a problem. I think it's fine. In fact, I have a number of friends who've been married for quite some time who've ended up dating somebody, or they met because they were in the same cohort, or because somebody was in, like a later cohort and somebody was in an earlier cohort. So what happens there, right, is that always remember that people going through a shared time of stress, they always get bonded a lot more deeply than if they don't have that shared stress. So, for example, my girlfriend and I met a few months before I started having like major health problems, right? And she and I were having this conversation last night that like I already cared about her quite a bit. But when I got sick, she was really there, right? She was really there in a way that I was like, oh, snap, like I don't just like this girl, like I think I love this girl, right? And so like that's an important thing to take into consideration, right? So, okay. And guys, please do feel free to keep asking questions. Otherwise, I've made some notes or whatever that I'll go through. At the end of the day, guys, right, something that very few people know about me is that after my first company, before I started Publication Academy and before I even started this YouTube channel, one of the things I got certified to do was to be a matchmaker, like a dating coach, and actually set up a matchmaking agency to match people. And we had some marginal success doing that, but at the end of the day, it wasn't a sustainable business model. If you guys are interested in checking out the website, which is still up, you guys can go to I'm putting this into the chat for you guys right now, themodelman.com. You guys can go ahead and go there and check it out. Still a great homepage if you check it out. So what happens is that, the reason why I started that agency is because, number one, there were very few in the entire United States male matchmakers. And number two is that sometimes, men want to talk to men about relationships, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. And I wanted to make sure that that resource was available to them. For me, I wanted to make sure that I knew everything that I possibly could in terms of what the research literature said, as opposed to simply just what I thought about things. Anecdotal experience is a form of hindsight, right? And the sample size is one. And you guys who do stats know just as much as I do that a sample size of one basically is meaningless. You can publish a case report, you can publish a case study, but that's pretty much it, right? So at the end of the day, what happens in terms of, these sorts of situations is that just because something is true for the level of the group doesn't mean it's true for the level of the individual. But research literature at the aggregate level across, let's say, tens of thousands of people, the findings that can be derived from them should not be ignored. Rather, they can point you in a very specific direction, and you should take it into consideration, right? Guys, great to see a few new people joining us. Wonderful to have you. Please do smash that like button. It'll help us get even more views for the channel. So what happens is that at the end of the day, right, men, based on the research literature, this is not what I think, this is what the research literature suggests at the nomothetic level, right? Is that at least for heterosexual couples, right, what you end up seeing is that men have three fundamental needs, right, of women to be found attractive, and women expect three things from men in order for them to be attractive, right? And these things are not good, they're not bad, they're not right, they're not wrong, they simply are based on the literature, right? So let's go through them really quick, right? So the three things that a man needs, and ladies, please chime in here, right? If you happen to be heterosexual, it doesn't matter which orientation it's, right? But if you think I'm totally off base, please do let me know, because this is based on literature, and you guys know me, I love you to death, and would love to hear your opinions on it. So basically, what women desire from us men is three different forms of security, right? And it's not so much the actual security, it is the perception of the security. So the first type of security that women need from us, right, is physical security, the perception of physical security. No, this doesn't mean that you need to go down to your local bar and just beat somebody up in front of her so that she'll think that you can protect her. No, you need to give her, and this is usually why people say it's like women love confidence, right? Confidence shows a lot of things. And one of the things that confidence is that it is a proxy, right, for physical security. The idea here is actually pretty simple, which is that at the end of the day, let's say that you and your girlfriend are walking down the street and a guy who's a mugger comes out of nowhere. He's going to rob you, right? She wants to have the perception that you're not going to take your wallet out, throw it at her, and then be gunning it down 3 streets away and just leaving her there, right? No, absolutely not, which is ridiculous, but you get the idea, right? So the perception of physical security is very important, right? One very famous behavioral economic finding that shorter men hate, and I'm 5'9", 5'10", like 5'9.5". So it's one of these situations where, I get it. I get the frustration, right? Is that men who are 5'5" versus men who are 6 foot tall, right? Men who are 6 foot tall making $67,000 a year. For a man who is 5'5" to be able to be perceived as physically attractive as the 6 foot man making $67,000 needs to make over $200,000 more than the 6 foot guy. Now, at the end of the day, I've worked with a lot of guys in terms of date coaching. And if anybody wants date coaching, I do that as well, right? I work with matchmakers all throughout the world, which is a lot of fun. And I'm a male date coach for them. And what happens is that these guys, they get really frustrated. And you know what, guys, at the end of the day, if you happen to be a shorter gentleman, again, I don't blame you. I don't shame you. I don't judge you. And the fact of the matter is, I wouldn't hold it against you if you felt that it was really unfair, right, that was happening to you, right, that you're being judged based on your height, right? So it's true. What I just gave you in terms of that finding is something that's really frustrating, and I wouldn't blame you for being mad. But if you really think about it, I also just gave you the solution, right? In other words, at the end of the day, the way that we can make up for that has to do with a monetary, like kind of a fiscal reward system, right? At the end of the day, we need to make more money. So we can sit down and be frustrated, or we can do something about it. And the most effective way to do something here, let's see, in evolutionary theory. Oh yeah, Natalie, I couldn't agree with you more, right? And the interesting thing is that in terms of evolutionary theory, what you're also going to find, and yeah, in terms of physical security, for sure, right? And here's the thing that I always say, right, is that culture evolves a lot more quickly than biology does. And we're not evolved to things like iPhone or things like Zoom and this kind of stuff, right? We're not evolved to it. We're evolved to, hunter-gatherer nomadic times. The way that you can actually map our brains is to be able to figure out Dunbar's number, which is about 150, which basically means that we can't actually know more than 150 people at any given time, right? And so think about it these days where you got somebody like Kylie Jenner, who has millions and millions and millions of followers. Still, somebody like Kylie Jenner can only really know about 150 people because that's what we're evolved to, right? And for people who don't believe in biological evolution, maybe for a theological reason, don't get me wrong, respect, right? But I'm sure that you can also agree in social evolution, right? That we as human beings have socially evolved over time, right? And so because of that, what I tell people who want to get married, both men and women, the best advice that I can provide, right, is essentially that let's operate under the assumption that contemporary culture needs to change fundamentally, right? Let's operate on that, right? It's really unfair, but at the end of the day, will that culture change our biology in terms of what we find attractive and not in the next 15 years? And the fact is no, it's not. Evolution doesn't happen that quickly, right? So the best thing we can do in terms of being in a heterosexual couple at least, and I wish that I could speak for LGBTQIA plus community, but it's something that I have too much respect for that community to claim a falsehood, which is that I know enough about that literature to be able to speak to it. So that's why I'm not talking about it now. Out of respect, I just don't know enough about that literature, but I do know enough about the heterosexual literature to be able to talk about this stuff, right? So second kind of perception of security is emotional security, right? At the end of the day, the thing that women end up finding attractive, evolutionarily speaking, as Natalie says, is that think about like the maypole dance. In the maypole dance, you got the maypole in the middle, right? And then you have individuals kind of, dancing around it and then these sorts of things, right? And this is kind of the idea, is that for better or worse, men don't cycle and men don't have a menstrual cycle, right? And so because of that, in terms of sex hormone levels at certain times of the month, men tend to stay, pretty stable in terms of having between 10 to 20 times more testosterone than the average woman. Again, we're talking at the nomothetic level. We are not talking at the level of the individual. Individual differences are very important, okay? But what we do on this channel is we focus on group-based stuff, right? So that's kind of the second thing, is emotional stability. During this cycling period, right, there's certain periods where there's going to be understandably more testosterone and certain periods where there's going to be more estrogen, right? And testosterone is something that ends up making us maybe a little bit more aggressive and also making us much more interested in sex, right? And in the luteal period of the menstrual cycle, what ends up happening is that it's much more high estrogen. So a lot more cuddles, a lot more lovey-dovey and these sorts of things, okay? And so because men don't have that, a lot of guys get confused, right? And guys get confused anyway, right? But this is definitely a source of confusion for a lot of guys because one of the things that men really value is what they call emotional stability. And emotional stability for men essentially all has to do with prediction. Men love to predict things, right? This is kind of our whole thing. If we can predict it, then we can deal with it. If we can measure it, then we can manage it, right? So these are kind of the keys to the kingdom for men, right? And so because of that, sometimes men can feel like a little bit scared, right? Mariana says, what about Nebraskan guys? What I would say, Mariana, is if you can find a really masculine one, date a cornstalk. Just a solid Nebraskan cornstalk probably will be a lot more, upstanding than the average Nebraskan guy. No, I'm kidding. I do know some great guys from Nebraska. So anyway, and don't worry, guys, I see comments or whatever, so I'll get to them. And the final thing, right, that we have for women who are interested in men is that, remember, at the end of the day, because of what we call hypergamy, which is a good thing, right, is basically the women date laterally and up and men date laterally and down. And this is really important for individuals like yourself because you guys are geniuses, right? And you guys are going to be amazing in academia, right? Now, here's the thing. There's a subtype of men that are garbage that I want you to stay away from, ladies, okay? And this is the subtype of men who are actually intimidated by intelligent and successful women, okay? And that is one piece of the puzzle. Now, I'm very lucky to say that at least in my life and in my career, and certainly the people that I hang around with, that typology is actually pretty rare. But because of hypergamy, because of the desire to date laterally and up, what happens is that rarely when women end up getting, let's say, their doctorate, are they interested in dating somebody who's a plumber, right? And the plumber could actually run his own business and make 6 figures and do exceptionally well. But he's a plumber, right? And I have talked to a lot of women about this. I've talked to a lot of men about this over the past decade, right? And it's a pretty consistent thing, right? And again, I'm not blaming, I'm not shaming, I'm not judging. I'm just saying that it is what it is, right? And that third piece of the puzzle, right, is the perception of resource security, right? In other words, if the woman is making, let's say, $150,000 a year, in which case you are freaking awesome, you're doing great, right? The likelihood that if you met the perfect guy for you and he was making $40,000 a year, and it's not that he was an ambitious guy making $40,000 a year, he loved his life. He's working for a nonprofit. He's making 40 grand. He's happy, right? The likelihood that you would be really interested in a long-term marriage-minded relationship decreases. I'm not saying it's zero, but it would decrease, right? Now, there's some bad guys out there, again, who you should stay away from, and they're going to use the G word, totally inappropriate here, right? Which is the word gold digger. Totally inappropriate, and we've never used it on this channel, right? There are typologies of men who are very bitter who would end up using this term. Usually these are men who are not very financially successful, or they're not very financially successful yet. Let's say, put it this way, right? So that's number one, okay? And remember, by 2023, over 80% of all master's and doctoral degrees awarded are going to be awarded to women compared to men. Best data about that, it's called Datanomics by John Berger, B-I-R-G-E-R. Brilliant book. I think you'd really enjoy it if you like this kind of stuff, right? So, and this is where I'm getting this data from, okay? So that's what we've got. But that's kind of worrisome, right? Because that means that like 80% of women are competing for 20% of men, right? If we're interested in dating laterally and up, and that's kind of scary. And the reason why it's kind of scary is that at the end of the day, what the literature shows is that if you end up having a lot of women and a few guys in a given group of single people, those guys are significantly less likely to settle down, less likely to be in a committed relationship, more likely to cheat, more likely to get divorced, all the bad stuff. All the bad stuff. We see the same thing in towns like where Sarah Lawrence College is, for example, compared to, let's say, Silicon Valley, where at least right now there's significantly more single men than single women. At there, it's something where the women, they're the prize, right? Because there's so many more single men, right? When you take a look at studies, single men in those sorts of places will actually take on significantly more debt in studies just to be able to buy these what we call Jehovah's signals, these things like the nice car, the nice house, the beautiful jewelry, the beautiful clothes, all that stuff, all the best stuff that you know you don't really need that isn't actually going to make you happy, right? So that's kind of what you end up seeing. So resource security, that's number three. 3 types of security, right? And then we go to the other side, right? And the other side is men, right? So ladies, in terms of what are guys looking for, we also have three things. And instead of security, we're looking for stability, right? Now, the one that I mentioned is emotional stability. Now, you may be thinking, what are you talking about, right? So emotional stability is actually really simple. The basic idea is that, like, let's say today we say, like, for example, my assistant Teresa, platonic love of my life. She is wonderful, absolutely great. She's like my little sister, right? Love her to death. Teresa, if you're watching, hey. So here's the deal, right? Let's say that I tell Daria, who's my girlfriend, right, that I'm going to go and have lunch with Teresa today, right? And Daria's like, great, honey, have fun. Perfect, right? And then let's say tomorrow I tell Daria, hey, need to have another lunch with Teresa, right? And she gets really frustrated with me. Now, this is, of course, will never happen and has never happened. But let's say that would happen. Me as a man, I would feel really not attractive. Why? Because I can't predict. Remember, so for men, prediction is the key, right? Like, you know, if you've ever been in this situation before, guys, where, for example, so ladies, let's say you come home and you just had a terrible day, right? All you want is to tell your partner about it without him trying to fix it. Because men are always trying to fix things. We think, why would you tell us something unless you want us to make it better? Maybe some of you watched the YouTube video called The Nail. If you haven't, I highly recommend it, right? The Nail. Just type it into YouTube. It's hilarious, right? Men are trying to fix stuff, right? The best thing you can do is give us rules. Men love games. And if you give us the rules to the game and you tell us how to win, ladies, you can get what you want here, okay? So all you have to do is say something like, honey, I just had the worst day at work. I was hoping that after we have dinner, we could go into the living room for like 15 minutes, sit in those two big chairs. You give the best advice. Today, I got to be honest with you. I just need you to listen, right? And you're a great listener. And when we're done with those 15 minutes, I'm going to be so much more relaxed and we're going to have a great night. That's it. You're the winner here, right? You just gave him all the rules, right? When, what, where, why, how, you just gave them all to him. And now he's going to feel good because men like to gamify things. That's why we like gadgets. It's like why we like Call of Duty and all this kind of nonsense, right? We like this kind of stuff because the rules are clear. And sometimes in contemporary relationships, right, the rules aren't clear. So the best thing you can do, ladies, to be able to get men to be able to actually kind of, be what you want them to be and do what you want them to do in a non-manipulative way is make the rules clear and provide incentives, right? Those things work really, really well with men, okay? So emotional stability. The second one, remember how it's like some guys are just like, awful, and they'll use that G word, gold digger, horrific, right? So you know that there's also a subtype of women who think that men who are only interested in physically attractive women, that they're misogynist pigs, that they're shallow and they're weak and they're these sorts of things, right? Again, totally inappropriate language. Men are visual, right? And because of that, the second type of stability is what is called attractive stability. All that means is that the guy's going to look at you and be like, God, like when I look at Daria, I think she's the most beautiful woman on this earth. Right. And when I look at her, I can't explain how, but it's like I have this prediction. Like I can tell that in 10 years, I'm going to think she's the most beautiful woman who's ever lived. Right. Like I just know it. Right. And so that's the second piece of the puzzle. OK, is this prediction of future attractiveness. Daria's in great shape now. She eats very healthy. She works out all the time. She really takes care, skincare routine and these sorts of things. She's just great in like every way. Right. So that's the second thing is attractive stability. And the third way, right, is what we call the responsible allocation of capital. To be honest with you, men don't care if you have a PhD and men don't care if you have $1 million in the bank. Right. Usually, guys, we make the assumption that we want to have access to the money anyway. Right. And we think it's great that there's education because education represents passion and these sorts of things, right? But for whatever reason, God bless, right? Like men just don't usually find it overly attractive. Now, importantly, that doesn't mean that they find it unattractive. Very important difference, right? But it's not something where guys are going to be leaps and bounds. Oh my gosh, I've always wanted a PhD. Very rarely. There are those types of guys too, right? But the majority, they just don't care that much. They care a lot more about, how they're getting treated in the context of the relationship. And so because of that, we don't care about resource security. We care about responsible allocation of capital. which basically means if I have $1,000 and I give the $1,000, so ladies, I'm speaking to you, if I give the $1,000 to you and you leave for the day and you come back, what happened? Do you come back with a new pair of like Louboutins, which are awesome shoes, right? Louboutins or something like that, or like 3 new fragrances, designer fragrances, something like this. Or did you put $100 in kind of savings? You got a bunch of organic food. You booked a reservation at both of your favorite restaurants. These sorts of things, right? Were you responsible with how the capital was allocated? I can tell you from my own experience. I remember going to a bar once with somebody I dated way back, right? And we went to the bar and we got, I don't know, $20, $40 worth of cocktails. And oh my gosh, I came back, gave her the credit card, I come back to the bathroom, and she had tipped hundreds of dollars, right? And I was like blown away, right? Because this wasn't our money, right? This was all me, right? And if she had talked to me about it first, maybe it would have been fine, right? But that kind of wasn't the case, right? So responsible allocation of capital is super duper important, right? So those are the things on both sides, okay? So now I want to talk about how going to graduate school can actually impact those different things. First, before I do it though, is I want to read the questions because you guys know you're important to me, right? And anybody guys who's just joining us, hi, right? Please do smash that like button. Helps us out a lot. We'll get some more viewers on the live stream. It'll be great. Love having you guys here. So, okay, let's take a look. Give us these little tiny Coke Zero things. So you guys want to see? I'll show you right now. So this is Dominican Republic. So Daria and I have been here for about a week now. Really pretty, right? Come on. So nice. Beautiful weather here today. This morning we had crazy rain though. It was wild. So, okay. So Mariana says, how is the visa process for foreign graduate students? I'm in Brazil and Brazilians have not had a good reputation against COVID. Mariana's a great question. It's not kind of in line for today's conversation at all. It's a really good question. Don't get me wrong, right? But it's also not something that I kind of have an answer off the top of my head. So I'm sorry about that one. Okay, Forever April says, can you talk about the faculty relationships you briefly mentioned? Even though it's inappropriate, it's not so much inappropriate, right? It's more something that the power dynamic does play a significant role here, right? Remember, laterally and up, laterally and down, right? Makes perfect sense, right? If you happen to be in a cisgender heterosexual relationship, right, where you're a young woman and it happens to be a male faculty member, let's say, who maybe he's a little older, right? What ends up happening, right, is that it makes sense hypergamously because, for you, it's lateral and up, right? And for him, it's lateral and down. So that actually would make sense. I'm not saying it's not natural to be, attracted to some of your graduate, it's probably not supervised, right? But like graduate faculty and these sorts of things. And so that's the reason. It's kind of transference, right? It makes perfect sense, April, for you to be attracted to teachers and these things. Also because, especially in grad school, guys, man, especially if this is like your supervisor, number one, they have huge amount of power over you, right? And power dynamics, let's be honest, sexy as hell. It is what it is. It is what it is. This is why 50 Shades of Grey and these things are like super popular, just saying, right? So that's one thing to be able to put there, right? And also in terms of other faculty members, right? These are individuals who are at the top of their field, right? They're like phenomenal. Really, really top of their field people, okay? And so because of that, this is something at the end of the day where it makes sense that these are winners. These faculty members, you're going to perceive them as winners, right? Now, when you're dating in your 20s, the best thing that you can do, so if you happen to be a woman and you happen to be interested in heterosexual men, right, then what happens is that, it's all about investing. Why? Because men who are, let's say you're 22 and the guy's 23, the 23-year-old guy's not the CEO. He's not going to be maybe manager of a Starbucks, but he's not going to be manager of Microsoft, right? It's just not going to happen. So at the end of the day, what you need to find is a guy with really good attitude, really good work ethic. He's got a good trajectory. You are investing in the trajectory, right? You're investing in what's called his PEP, which is potential earning power, right? That's what you're investing in. And that's okay. Again, you're not a gold digger. This is not a thing. It's so inappropriate for people to say words like that, right? It's not. It is a totally logical evolutionary strategy, right? Now that's number one. Here's the trouble, right? You don't know whether it's going to work. I have a number of friends who've been divorced now for a while, and they got divorced because the man went to Oxford, or the man went to Harvard or Princeton, and, graduated, worked for a bunch of startups, and they just never took off. So now the women in the relationships are making significantly more money, and they think they can do better than the guys. And so they divorce the guys. In the US, over 70% of all divorces are filed by women, right? So usually it's them are the ones who are, filing, right? Doesn't mean the guys didn't do anything. That's not what I'm saying, okay? But it's the stat, right? And so what ends up happening is that those relationships kind of end, right? But that's the best you can do in your 20s. I love being in my 30s. Dating in your 30s is like way better, right? So Daria's in her early 30s. I'm in my mid 30s. I'll be 35 in a few months, which is like, what? But it happens, right? Luckily, I'm Indian and have good skin, right? But what happens here, right? And Barb, don't worry for being late. It's wonderful to see you. So what ends up happening here in terms of dating in your 30s, it's much more about where are you now. It's not about like, hey, in 10 years, where are you going to be? All we care about is right now, right? So ladies, that's the smart way to do it. Don't say this guy may want kids in 5 years if he says I adamantly don't want kids. Neuroplasticity ends in late adulthood or emerging adulthood. So, which essentially is like anywhere between 26 to 29 or so, depending on who you ask, right? So when you're in your 30s, the likelihood that guy is going to become Elon Musk, if that guy currently works in some other type of job, a lower level job, it's just unlikely. I'm not saying 0%, but I'm saying close to it, right? So at the end of the day, it's equivalent to waiting at the finish line and dating the winners, okay? And that is a logical evolutionary strategy. That is a logical strategy. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever, right? So that's what I would say about that, okay? So that's why it makes sense, April, to be attracted to those people. Literally, you are using a totally sensible evolutionary strategy deeply embedded in your limbic system, right? Which is basically, hey, this guy or this girl, right, this woman, right, has already reached the top of their field. They're already there. They're not on their way. They're there, right? And it makes perfect sense to be attracted to them. I don't want you to feel bad about being attracted to them, okay? So that's that. Marianne. Okay, Marianne says, I might be in Nebraska. I need man advice for these types of guys. They look differently from you, for example. Okay, so Mariana, tell me about how they look. Natalie already said, yeah, very good. Mariana, what about Nebraskan guys? I'm afraid of macho men. God, I don't like that type. Even the good shape is interesting. Is interesting? It's not interesting? Yeah, we have to take a look, Mariana, when you say Nebraska has a lot of women, and kind of like what the divide is there, right? Let's see. Yeah, of macho men, I completely understand, right? So here's the thing. Whenever we talk about macho men, right, we're talking about high testosterone men, right, at the end of the day. Level of testosterone is determined during the second trimester of gestation. Oh, no, that's a total lie. I'm sorry. It is determined between the 6th to 8th week, right, of gestation. It's interesting, but macho men. Interesting. Okay. So, Mariana, when you say good shape, right, all you're basically talking about, women find 3 parts of the male anatomy most attractive according to the data. Number 1, the butt. The butt, numero uno, 40%. I can guarantee you right now. Why? Because the glutes are the part of the body that are most engaged in the thrusting motion, right? During sex, this makes perfect sense, right? Butt is number 1, right? Number 2 is the chest, and number 3 is the legs. Okay, so why the chest? Broader chest. For women, men are looking for a 7 to 10 waist to hip ratio. Okay, for men, women are looking for a 10 to 9, the Dorito as they call it, right? I always say I'm not a Dorito, I'm a trapezoid, right? I got wider hips. I remember once trying to get really cut, right? Like really cut up. And I went to my doctor. I'm like, doc, I'm 32-inch waist. I want to get down to 30. And he pokes me down here. He says, you feel those, son? And I'm like, yep. He's like, those are bones. Those are bones. He's like, you're not getting any thinner, man. It's just not going to happen. So, you got to respect that and live with it, right? But the most important thing isn't that you look like Schwarzenegger. Most important thing is you got body fat under 20%, preferably under 15% as a man, okay? And that your body shape is 10 to 9. what my recommendation is for men, okay, is that I need you guys to do 4 things. Number 1, get in the best conceivable shape you can. Again, under 20%, preferably under 15% body fat. Go to your local gym, ask them if they have an in-body scanner. Anything other than that god-awful piece of plastic thing that you hold on to like this, totally inaccurate, don't use it, okay? That's number 1. You can also ask if they know where there's a bod pod. They'll know what I'm talking about, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, for the love of God, find out how to dress. Hire someone. Make some money, deliver some pizzas, and hire a fashion consultant who can buy you some clothes, okay? There's nothing wrong with that, okay? If you don't know how to dress, not everybody knows how to dress. God bless you. It's not a bad thing, right? Number 3, guys, right, is you need to know how to be well-groomed. And number 4 is that you need good hygiene. If you do those 4 things, you're frickin' George Clooney up in this thing, okay? Please do those different things. You're going to be fine, okay? So that's what I'd say about that. Macho men, testosterone, okay? The things that women traditionally find attractive in men, chiseled jawbone, right? A certain kind, if you take a look, for example, for me here, I'm higher testosterone. Do you see right here, this ridge, right? Some men don't have it. Some men, it's just straight down, right? Men who are higher testosterone have this ridge. The easiest way, ladies, to be able to check for a guy's testosterone, ask him to put his hand up like this. Okay, when you ask a man to put his hand up like this, okay, what I want you to take a look at, right, is, I said this is called digit ratio. This is my ring finger, this is my pointer finger, okay? The larger the discrepancy between the ring finger and the pointer finger, right, the more testosterone the man has. In women, usually it's either still a little bit shorter sometimes, but closer, the same, or in very high estrogen women, it looks like that. Okay, but for me, it looks like this. Okay, interestingly, this is also the thing, digit ratio is the thing that best predicts playing with toys. So, of course, pop culture would have you believe that Barbies are culturally, girl toys, and G.I. Joe traditionally boy toys. But when you adjust for digit ratio, the differences go away, right? At the end of the day, girls who end up having a digit ratio more testosteronergic, they're playing with Tonka trucks and these things. And the boys who are more estrogenergic are playing with the dolls and these things. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But that's what the literature says, okay? Now, let's keep rolling. Yeah, okay, so macho men, that's the thing. So good shape, 10 to 9, look for it, okay? Other than that, yeah, not financially stable. That's okay. Next thing, blah, 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 blah. God, you guys have some good questions here. Yeah, Mariana says, oh my God, Nebraska has a lot of women. Yeah, may want to move somewhere that has more men than women. Just an idea. Take advantage of the data. You guys know me. I'm just data McGee, right? The one thing that the data speaks completely against, though, was online dating, right? That worked for me. So that's frustrating for me because I always love it when the data lines up, as you know, right? So that's that. Okay, Mariana's in her 30s, not a PhD candidate yet. Okay, good shape is interesting, macho men are not. Okay, fair enough, right? Good shape is interesting. Okay, so Forever April says, so do people actually go for faculty members? Yes, I've seen it. There's one very famous case in my field. It's really bad. Or do they have to stop themselves even if the attraction makes sense? Curious to hear your stories, maybe only. Okay, yes, I do know of stories where people have only started dating after the program has ended. To be honest with you, God bless. Program's over, you've done your job. Good for you. Good for you, right? But I had one friend at Yale, for example, and she was in a relationship with an assistant professor who was also, she was a student of his once, and then all of a sudden she was still enrolled, he was still a faculty member, they continued sleeping together, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened or whatever that everybody found out, and he was fired, right? And that really stinks. Right. And I definitely know some folks where it was never discovered and such. And there was one famous case at a university in Western Canada where the faculty member threatened to quit if they kicked the student out and these things. He got very aggressive. It's a famous case in my subfield. There's baby fields, right? So yeah, it definitely happens, right? Forever April 10. In general, do you think academics prefer to date other academics or non-academics? In German, there's a word, April, it's called Geschmackssache. Geschmackssache means personal taste. Whew, it's a good question. Let's put it this way. I try never to kind of use personal anecdotal stuff because I don't want you guys to think that just because something's true for me, it'll be true for you as well. You know that. What I'll say is for me, I've dated people who are both academics and non-academics. I've always strongly preferred people who are not academics, particularly people who are very artsy. I'm very organized, very structured, and I'm also pretty unique, in terms of as a guy. I'm very outgoing. I have a lot of big passions and big goals and big all this kind of stuff, right? And some people, the lives that they want, and God bless these people, they want chilled out lives, right? And they're looking for a guy who's super calm and super chilled out. And people have a right to desire what they want to desire, right? If they're optimizing themselves, and you guys know I have 7 dimensions of optimization, make yourself the best version of yourself. Physical health, mental health, spiritual health, occupational, educational health, anything with finances. 3 kinds of social health: romantic, familial, and platonic, like with your buddies, right? If you can optimize those 7, add to that opportunity, your husband ain't gonna come knocking on your door and be like, yo, I'm Boaz, what a pleasure, right? That's not a thing, okay? So just don't believe in that. Don't trust that, right? That's something important to take into consideration, right? The next one, right, is that in terms of, somebody just has to know. People are asking more questions, right? So I have to be sure to read. So for me, it's something where I have so much going on in my head, guys, all day, every day. I'm thinking about publishing stuff. I got book contracts. I got grant applications, and I run 2 full internationally successful businesses. I'm an investor in over 30 companies. I do a lot of stuff. I do navigating academia for fun, and I love getting consults with you guys. So if anybody's ever interested in doing a one-on-one consultation session with me, I'd love to be able to do that. I just put in the chat window here the website. You can go and take a look at the rates. Just email me based on, there'll be an email address there. I found, guys, that it works way better if people just look at the rates and then email me, because then I know who's serious or not, instead of using the calendar that's on there. So just do me a favor and do that. And we can talk about the dating stuff too if you like. It's fun. Yeah, so Daria is not an academic. Daria is very much an artist and a phenomenal artist. And I love looking at her stuff because the kind of stuff she could do, I could never do. And Daria is so calm and so kind and all the things I want. And she sees all the things in me that are really, really special and very eccentric. I'm an eccentric person, right? And not only does she see those things, but she encourages them and she loves me for it, right? And that's really cool. And I think that if you're an academic and you talk about I've written 5 books, it's just that's cool. I've written 2 books. Okay, right? That's a very similar life. And I do have friends who are both academics and married, and they have beautiful relationships, wonderful relationships. It can work either way. Okay, Barb, good to have you. Barb says, my daughter is now interviewing for master's programs, graduates in June. Yeah, Barb, make sure she watches all of our videos, okay, on how to be able to do interviews for grad school, right? And if she ever wants to do a mock interview with me, just, book a session with me and I will grill her like crazy. If anybody wants to do that, if it's interview season, guys, I have 50 or 60 interview questions, which is a combination of some of the ones that you guys will see in my videos and a ton more that I've compiled through the years. And I will go at it with you. I'll look at your CV. I'll look at your personal statement. I will go to town and come up with questions specifically about you, right? And we'll have a good time, not only doing the interview, but then also talking about how we can polish your answers, okay? And I'd love to do that with you. Again, website is on there. We can do it, okay? Here we go. Hopefully plans to go on to a doctoral program after that. Cool. I think she should plan to stay single for at least these 2 years. Awesome. Oh, Barb, you rock. Thank you so much. That's great. And Barb, it's true. I have had a lot of parents book sessions for their children. This is a whole thing apparently, right? I literally 3 weeks ago had somebody else and they had a great experience. So there's a lot of fun. So, don't feel bad. It's our secret, Barb, right? So I think she should plan to stay single at least these 2 years. It's really tough. It's really tough, right? There's a total double standard and it is a biological, and unfair double standard. You got Mick Jagger, he's like 75 and he's still having kids, right? If I have a 75-year-old woman, it's just not possible, right? Fewer eggs, likelihood of implantation being successful is statistically significantly less, even with modern technology, right? And so because of that, depending on everybody, it's so beautiful about current contemporary relationships. We all get to decide what we want and what we get to prioritize. I always say, guys, that life is all about choices and trade-offs. That's what it is. We're allowed to be able to have our preferences, and we're allowed to decide in the context of a relationship what kind of roles each of us want to play. And I think that's great. I think if you and your partner can agree on the roles and it's not hurting anybody else and it's not hurting the relationship and you're maximizing the likelihood of your happiness and the likelihood that both of you can kind of self-actualize to the extent possible, God bless you in your relationship, right? Nobody should tell you that that's wrong. Right. I personally, I'm a traditional guy. I am. I don't apologize for it for a second. Right. I've worked my entire life and have luckily been very successful to be able to have a family where I am the sole breadwinner. And that's what I want. And it's just as fine as people who want other things. Right. So that's just finding somebody who wants the exact same thing. And that's OK. Right. So let's see here. Pursuing an academic job can put a strain on relationships. Oh my gosh, April, you are right. Sorry. So quickly, just for Barb, in terms of stay single at least these 2 years. Let's put it this way. Would it be easier, Barb? Yeah. Make sure that she watches my video on advice for the partners of new graduate students. That's a good video, and it's a really important one. The fact of the matter is, guys, is that when you get into grad school, it's going to be one of the happiest days of your life. In the first year, it's probably going to be really awesome. If you're a doctoral program, master's program, you got to get on that thing, right? If you guys are doing a master's, if you guys are about to enter a master's program, you need to book a session with me so we can talk about how to make the most of it, because you can't just go to the master's program and then you're just going to get into a doctoral program. That is not how this works. There are very specific things you need to do in a master's program to max out the likelihood of getting into the doctoral programs. And this is like no joke. I can't tell you how many master's students I've worked with who are just about to submit their applications where I'm like, this is nuts, right? Like you didn't do any of the things you were supposed to do, but their supervisor told them, oh, you're fine, you're going to be great, you're a shoo-in. Don't trust your supervisors, don't trust your friends, definitely don't trust your family members because they're psychophantic, and it's a beautiful thing. Psychophantic, if you don't know what that is that they're like yes people. They'll just say, yes, you're amazing. Yes, you're a shoo-in. Yes, you're these things. You need somebody independent. It can be me. It can be anybody, okay? Totally independent. Do not go to career services, okay? Career services is full of wonderful people who got their BA in communication and they're not getting jobs anywhere else, which sounds like a really mean thing to say, but you guys know me. My job is to shoot you straight. It is what it is. There's some phenomenal people there. It's more rare to be able to find those people, right? You want people who are specific to your field, who know what to look for. Really, really important. Okay. So again, book a session. Should she stay single for the next 2 years? If she can find somebody who understands the game that she is ensconced in and understands that she wants to do a doctorate after that, such that it's going to be 3 to 7 years, I would say usually 4 to 7 years after that, God bless her. It has to do with how old she is. It has to do with a large number of things. Because people sometimes want to prioritize family. And there is nothing wrong with getting an undergraduate degree and saying, I want a family. And then being an adult student when you get your master's and your doctorate and then pursuing the career of your dreams. Amazing, right? Is it fundamentally unfair that men don't have to do that? Yeah. Right, it is biologically unfair, right? And I'm certainly not, I'm being, bare bones about it, but it's really important to be able to understand that the beautiful thing about this day and age and contemporary culture is that you get to choose what you want, right? Really important. I decided, guys, that I said my 20s, after my first relationship, which was that one, I almost got engaged. I was 21. Come on, I ended it when I was 22. After that, I didn't date for like 8 years. I went on some dates and these things, right? But I kept my head down and I pushed and I got 2 doctorates and I ran a successful company. I scaled it, I sold it, and then I didn't have to do anything anymore. And now I'm still doing stuff, but it's for fun, right? But That's what I decided to do. And it's a trade-off. I traded, right, less time with my future grandchildren. I traded it in exchange for success, for monetary gain, right? Oh, Barb, 21, tell wah. Okay, yeah, Barb, I'm team Barb here, okay? If she is 21, let her be single for 2 years. Woo, please. Now, if you remember reverse psychology, right? The more Mama Bear says stuff, the more she's going to want to self-individuate. But again, if you want me to talk to her, I can talk to her and we'll make sure she's not dating anybody. It wouldn't actually make sense if she wants to get into a doctoral program. So here we go. Final question, guys, and then I've got to go for the day. We're going to go to the pool. It's going to be great. Here we go. April says pursuing an academic job can put a strain on relationships since you have to go to where the jobs are. Could be too busy to start a family. Oh, April, you're so right. How should people navigate it? Oh, April, people ask me this all the time. I get sessions all the time with people asking me this, right? It is a matter of priority and compromise. That's what it is, right? The fact of the matter is that if you were doing a full-time doctoral program, the likelihood that you're going to be working full-time at the same time, it's like nothing. It's like nothing, especially for like a legit doctoral program, not like an online doctoral program where it's like you can do it however, whenever you want, blah, 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 these, hippy-dippy sorts of programs usually aren't the ones with the best name schools attached, right? I'm sure there's probably a few, but none that I know. You can tell me. You can comment in the comments below. So because of that, you just need to decide what's most important right now and run the probabilities, right? These days, because of modern technology, 35 is no longer like bump, in terms of like the age you need to be mega concerned about. But if possible, in terms of having, munchkins, having kiddos, right? It's not a bad idea to think about it in the late 20s, early 30s, right? That's kind of the sweet spot, right? I mean, to be honest with you, the sweet spot is like 21 to 24, right? But I don't know a lot of great parents who were 21 to 24. When I was 22, I killed a cactus. Okay? So let's see. I'm going to say that. Oh, Miriam, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Right? It's really tough. It's really hard, right? Because we need to figure out kind of what we want to do, like in this life. The fact of the matter is, if you take a look at a multivariate analysis of the major sources of joy in life, happiness and work family and work shows up for both men and women. For men, 70% of the variance ends up being accounted for by work, and for women, 70% is accounted for by relationships, and not just with their kids and not just with romantic partners, but with anybody, right? Just relationships in the community with friends and these sorts of things, right? My goal is always not to get you guys happy, because happiness is a fleeting feeling, right? My goal for you is always to be able to get sustainable joy. Right? Sustainable joy is the name of the game. It's not fireworks and these things. It's that nice slow burn that's going to, keep your thing of soup at a solid bubble, right? That's what we're looking for. So awesome. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and call it a day today. Love you to death. Thank you so much for checking in. If you ever want to talk more about the subject, if you guys want help, again, prepping for interviews, especially during this season, or you're about to enter into a master's program and you want to get into a doctoral program after, you want to make the most of it, right? Please book us. Like, seriously, this isn't me trying to make money. My issue is that, guys, I never have any advice on this. Nobody shot me straight on these things. It is always a crapshoot. In other words, it's a roll of the dice in terms of success, right? However, we can load the dice and maximize the likelihood that you're going to get into your target program. And that's what I'm here for, okay? Is one-on-one to be able to do this with you. I'm also thinking about starting a Patreon so that for these live streams, I can kind of keep a big family of them. And then I love doing these live streams with you guys. You guys mean so much to me. I so appreciate you. And so because of that, I'm thinking about starting a Patreon that'll have all of those. And then there'll be a second tier where you guys actually get a vote and tell me what types of topics, specific topics you want me to do live streams on. And then the Patreon folks will decide on that. And then I'll run it on YouTube. And then the recordings of it, everybody can attend live for free. And then the recordings for here on out, so it'll build and build and build, right, will be on Patreon. So that's kind of my game plan, just to let you guys know. So Awesome. All right, guys, care about you so much. Really appreciate you. Make sure to like this video, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.